Auburn's non-con basketball schedule is going to be fun again. Yes, sir. We're back. It's another episode of the Barn Hoops Podcast. I'm your host, Kyle Rush, a.k.a. Charlie 5, and this is my buddy from the Auburn Radio Network, Jacob Hillman, and we are ready to talk Auburn men's hoops. Hey, this non-con schedule is going to be tough again. We're going to look at some way too early NCAA tournament predictions, and we're going to continue the conversation on the roster, how we're going to fill it out, which direction Bruce is going to go. Got a big visitor coming in this weekend. But before we do that, we got to give a quick shout out to mybookie.ag. Use coupon code BARN, B-A-R-N, for a 50% deposit bonus up to $1,000. Give them $100. They're going to give you 50 back on top of it to play with. And free play. So any sport, it's a great time to bet right now. There's sporting events. You got hockey, you got NBA playoffs, you got Major League Baseball, all kind of stuff. So check them out, mybookie.ag. Guys, I got a big surprise for you. So Jacob is a legit basketball guy. Okay, I'm a basketball fan. You're going to have a basketball guy, Jacob Hillman, joining us. He does a lot of work with, Auburn broadcasts, a lot of just work with the basketball team in general. I'm going to pass the baton to you, Jacob. You're gonna take it from here, and he's going to be your Barn Hoops podcast. Auburn needs a really good basketball podcast year round, and I think this is the guy to do it. So without further ado, Jacob, I'm going to pass the baton and let you take it from here.
Well, I appreciate it, Kyle, and I appreciate the opportunity from you and Zach and the rest of the Barn family for trusting me and enlisting me in this opportunity. I'm pumped to do it. I've loved Auburn basketball pretty much my entire life, so to be able to do this now on a weekly and multiple times per week basis is going to be awesome, and I hope to provide some content for everybody. But as Kyle alluded to, let's go ahead and look ahead some to this 25 to 26 Auburn basketball team and the college basketball landscape, because Joe Lunardi of ESPN released his way too early bracket for the 2026 NCAA tournament. And the takeaway for me was how difficult the non-conference schedule is going to be for Auburn basketball again here in 2025. We know what it was like last year, going to Houston, going to Duke, facing Purdue and Birmingham, Ohio State and a Holiday Hoops Gaming, the Maui Invitational, obviously. You're going to see a lot of that again this year with this Auburn basketball schedule. And it's really going to start off early. And, when you take a look at this bracket, Auburn is a 4 seed in the Midwest region and would go through Tampa and Chicago for the first and second rounds, and then the Sweet 16 and Elite 8 if it were to make the Final Four. But again, looking at the opponents that Auburn will face this upcoming year, we know Auburn's going to face Purdue. They're the number 1 overall seed, according to Joe Lunardi right now. And then there's another number 1 seed, and I think the number 2 overall seed, Houston, who will come to Birmingham this upcoming November or December. And then Arizona is a number 3 seed who is going to come to Neville Arena in the first Sunday of December. And that's an exciting one for me, just because when you look at the recent non-conference schedules, Auburn hasn't faced a ton of those high major opponents here at Neville Arena until SEC play. So getting Arizona here and making the return trip to McHale Center in 2026 is going to be really exciting. But I just want to look at that non-conference schedule and the rest of that bracket. And that's not to mention that Auburn's going to have an ACC opponent come to Neville Arena, Holiday Hoops Giving, and then the Players Era Invitational in Las Vegas as well over Thanksgiving break. It is going to be another incredible November and December for Auburn basketball.
Not a one-hit wonder. This wasn't a one-hit wonder as far as non-conference schedules go. Golly, hey, I tell you what, I'll take a 4 seed right now. As far as watching this roster rebuild, which we'll talk about a little bit later, I'll take a 4 seed right now. Purdue, projected number 1 overall seed. Obviously, it's way too early. Houston, that game was fantastic. You get another taste of it in Birmingham. Unreal. I can't wait for this Arizona game. I can't wait for that December 6th. That's going to be a blast. I'll just love the fact that, there were a lot of folks, I think, that maybe even thought that this schedule this past year was like Bruce's last go. Like, hey, I'm gonna stack it up. We're gonna give it one last run. It doesn't seem like that's slowing down anytime soon. And the cool thing about it is that Auburn has the pull to be able to pull off these schedules, to make where the other teams see value enough for the big game. I just never thought we'd be here with Auburn basketball, and here we are, back-to-back years. You got the Vegas tournament again too that we haven't even really talked about. That's going to be stacked with a ton of good teams. It's just a great way to kick off the basketball season with this non-conference schedule.
You're exactly right, and again, I think Coach Pearl mentioned it last season multiple times, giving a lot of credit to Purdue and coming down to Birmingham last year and being willing to accept Auburn up to Indianapolis this upcoming year. They're going to play in Gainbridge Arena whenever that game is played. And he's very thankful for that. And I think it leads to games like Arizona being scheduled because again, when you look at the last few years, USC came to Auburn when they had Bronny James. That was a huge game. Bronny was still recovering from that medical scare he had over the summer. So he wasn't 100%. And then you go back to 2018, 2019, when Washington came to town as a top 25 opponent. Outside of that, there has not been a ton of those high major opponents make their way to Neville Arena, and Arizona's going to do that in December. So that place will be rocking. That'll be the first taste for, those freshmen in the jungle and those that haven't experienced a high major game in Neville Arena to do that in December, and obviously not have to wait until January or until Kentucky or Alabama get to the building and experience one of those great top 25 matchups that we expect to see.
Do you think a 4 seed's pretty fair?
I think so.
Or is it pie in the sky, or do you think that's pretty attainable with what you've seen based so far?
Well, and something else to mention is the SEC is projected to have 13 teams, according to Lenardi, in the field. So you go from 14 to 13. The SEC is, apparently falling off by one team. Yeah. And I think that is really going to be – I want to see the SEC schedule for Auburn before, thinking about this because, again, you look at the way Auburn went into the NCAA tournament. It obviously didn't matter losing 3 or 4, but you don't want a ton of those falters to happen in the middle of January or February. That's where you kind of struggle in the SEC, and I think you lose some steam in the NCAA tournament as far as the bracket goes and the selection process goes. But I think that this team, the way it's being built out, and of course, I'm assuming that Todd Pettiford is going to return and withdraw from the NBA draft because you're going to need that presence that was on this Final Four team this past year to really carry some of these newer guys, these newcomers, even if they are they have a veteran presence. They've been in the NCAA tournament. They know what SEC basketball is like, and some of them don't. I think you need to hide a man who's been through the big time moments like that Michigan second half and even the entire game against Michigan State. I think that Todd Pettiford returning can really elevate Auburn to that top 16 level, even potentially a top 10 level still this year. Obviously, Auburn last year was the best team from 1st of November to the end of February, and then obviously lost some steam before making the Final Four run and Florida becoming the best team in the nation ultimately. But I just think that this team has to weather some storms in the SEC because we know it's going to be tough again. There's a lot of turnover in the SEC, but I still think the SEC will be the toughest conference by far in college basketball.
So last year, Auburn won the conference outright with, I think, 3 losses. Is that right? Three conference losses with the same amount of teams sort of projected to be in the NCAA tournament. Another tough year. Do you see some record, something about like a 15-3 possibly being like the target to go for if you're going to win the conference outright?
Well, again, I think if you go 15-3, it might be like Auburn last year where you win the conference with a week to play and you lose those 2 games at the end and it doesn't impact you as much. And that was the whole conversation going into the selection show was Auburn's lost 3 of its last 4. Does this cost them the number 1 overall seed? And it obviously didn't because the resume was just that strong and the SEC was that strong. So I think that a 14-4 could even win the league. I mean, you go back to 2018 when Auburn won its first SEC title under Coach Pearl. It was 13-5. That's right. That's more of the record I kind of expect to see from whoever comes out on top in the SEC. Unless a Kentucky just goes absolutely crazy this year, like Auburn did this past season. I don't see anyone running away with it the way Auburn did this past year. But again, this schedule is just going to shake out to be the toughest in the nation. Again, I mean, we mentioned the 3 opponents we know of that Auburn will face this upcoming year and where they stack up in Lunardi's first bracket. But again, there's a Players Era Invitational in Las Vegas where there's several SEC teams. I imagine Auburn wouldn't be matched up with them. Alabama, Texas A&M, and Tennessee are there. But St. John's, that matchup would be a heck of a lot of fun for Auburn. They're another number 1 seed in Lunardi's bracket.
I mean, you got Duke, Houston, Iowa State, Kansas, Michigan, who played in the NCAA tournament, Rutgers, like you said, St. John's, Syracuse, Tennessee, Texas, UCLA, like you name it, and they're in it. It's I guess in theory, maybe you could play some of these teams even twice.
Well, and that's the thing is with this tournament. I mean, with so many teams, who knows who Auburn's going to be matched up with over Thanksgiving week into Sin City, and I assume those schedules will come out over the next few months, and we'll cover all of that right here on the Barn Hoops podcast. And you mentioned Duke. It's kind of funny that SEC ACC challenge. Does Auburn get the return trip from the Blue Devils for that matchup? I would love to see it. I don't know if it'll happen, but it would make sense to have the Final Four rematch. That would draw a ton of ratings unless they go for the Florida Duke route with the national champions.
Yeah, I wonder if that hurts us from being able to get Duke in Neville because of the ACC. Like, I wonder how much precedence is there that they just flip-flop like year after year. I don't know. I feel like they try to get new teams matched up each year, but that would be sick. A return to get Duke inside. It'll be another time where we can show them. We showed them a little taste of what Auburn's crowd can be like, but to get the full Monty will be pretty spectacular.
Duke also a number 1 seed in Joe Lunardi's way too early 2026 bracketology. But, another team that I wouldn't mind bringing to Neville Arena for that SEC ACC challenge is a rematch with Virginia. I know that would bring the crowd for that game. It would be very.
I think we might get this one. I think we might get that one too.
That's the way I kind of think as well. So we'll have to see when all those schedules get released. Holiday Hoopsgiving is another matchup that we'll anticipate to see Auburn in Atlanta. Obviously, Auburn tries to move around some and play in these southeastern locations so that fans that might not make it to Neville Arena get to go and watch the Tigers play in Atlanta, in Birmingham. And then they're even going to go up to Indianapolis for that Purdue game. So looking forward to that. And especially as the schedule comes out, I might do something about a wish list of who I want to see, whether it's come to Neville Arena, Auburn play in the future and whatnot, because I think that's so interesting, especially with Auburn becoming a recent basketball power and getting that notoriety with its second Final Four. It's about time that some of these programs step up and play the Tigers and even come to Neville Arena. That's why I am so excited for that Arizona game, that first Sunday in December. But, we talk about this team and being a 4 seed and where it's going to land. And I think that's going to really start to shake out when Auburn lands its final portal needs, and that's going to be a big man. Coach Pearl came on the Auburn Georgia Tech broadcast with Andy Burcham a couple weeks ago, and he specifically called out he wants another big man, and that would be to complement Keyshawn Murphy and Emeka Oporum, who's coming out of the JUCO ranks. So I think you look at that kind of 4-5 line. I don't think he's looking specifically for a center, but I think a 4 or 5 is exactly what Auburn needs to fill out this roster and feel comfortable going into the summer that you're ready to go for the 25 season.
Yeah, and you got James Scott from Louisville, who it seems like might be the guy. Like, it seems like the momentum's kind of picking up with him from Louisville. 6'11", 210. Only played 23 minutes a game last year, but averaged 7 and 6. And I think that if you're looking for a big man, you said that 4 or 5 line. That's, to me, perfect. I want to ask you a question, Jacob. You're a basketball guy, and get your opinion on this. Bruce Pearl. Let me back up. Janai Broome was obviously fantastic, but I think running an offense through a big man is unnatural for Bruce Pearl. That's not really how he typically likes to, execute his offense. Now, they did it well, and Broome obviously could make. If you got a one-on-one battle, he can make it happen. But the way this team's shaking out, this feels more like a traditional Bruce Pearl team. Like it's got taken on the shape of maybe a more traditional Bruce Pearl team. Your big guys are more for defense, rebounding, putbacks, and then if you can get it to them inside, run some sets, run some pick and rolls, things like that to get it to them. But this is going to be to me, you're 1 through 4. You got some lineups that you can run where you have scoring threats everywhere. And I think, like you said, it starts with Tahad Pettiford. But I love Abdul Bashir. I love the idea of having a 6'7" 2 guard. I love the addition of his name. The D2 kid. I'm drawing a blank.
Elijah Freeman.
I saw some lists where they were talking about possible D2 one and dones, and he's like number 2 on that list, like which is huge. And then obviously the superstar Keyshawn Hall. I don't know. Am I way off on this?
I don't think so. And I think what you mentioned, the length of this team is going to be its strength. And Auburn had quite a bit of that last season. And I think you saw early on a lot of those pick and roll and those sets that Coach Pearl and Coach Burgomaster, that Bruce really, really praises as his offensive coordinator and the mastermind behind some of these offensive sets. There's a lot of alley-oops in Maui. That's what I remember from November and December was Tahad and Denver throwing the ball to the rim and letting Dylan Cardwell, Janai Broome, Chad Baker-Mazara, whoever it is, go and get it and slam it. And I think you're going to see a little bit more of that this year. A lot of rim running and, we talk about the ball handler and the guard play and how Coach Pearl wants to see his offense run. This all depends on Tahad Pettiford coming back, obviously. Sure. But behind him, you're going to have Caden Magwood, who's coming out of the high school ranks, and he's a score-first kind of guard. And he's a combo guy. I think he's going to play a little bit of the two, but that's what BP said about Tahad last year. Yeah. And Tahad ended up playing a lot of the one behind Denver Jones. So I think that Magwood can grow into that role similar to the way Tahad did going into March and really be that guy to provide that depth. And then we mentioned Elijah Freeman. He is he's as long as they get, and he is going to be awesome on the perimeter, but he's also going to be awesome inside and I think on the defensive end as well. He's as athletic as they get. He's going to kind of fill that Chad Baker-Mazara role. He's going to be a 3 and a 2 when needed, and he's going to control the ball, I think, at times, similar to the way Chad did when Auburn needed that spark or someone was in foul trouble or there was an injury. And another guy that we haven't really mentioned, Kevin Overton, the transfer from Texas Tech.
Yeah,
he is a guy that's going to have that veteran presence, I feel like, to really help settle down things. I thought Denver Jones was so important these last 2 seasons, and especially this past year as the number 1. He just really settled down the offense when it needed to. We saw in that Texas A&M game in College Station how important he was, and that even translated into the Alabama game where he wasn't 100%, and Alabama played great on the offensive end, and you needed his defense. I think Overton brings that same kind of physicality, that same kind of mentality as a junior. So something else on this roster that I think is very important to note is there's only 3 or 2 guys that are only going to have 1 year of eligibility left. That's something this coaching staff loves. And you look at last year's Final Four team. Janai Broome was a multi-year transfer. Chad Baker-Mazara, as well as Denver Jones, multi-year transfers. Chaney Johnson, a multi-year transfer. And then you plugged in guys that you needed. Miles Kelly, he was a late addition. I think he committed to Auburn on Memorial Day weekend last year.
Yeah, it felt like it was June-ish, but I guess Memorial Day weekend makes sense too.
Exactly. So it's one of those things where it's a build for the future. You might not go win the national title next year or make another Final Four run, but you feel good about this roster to make a second weekend run in the NCAA tournament. And from there, you never know. It's all about matchups. And
crapshoot after that, yeah.
Exactly. If you get the right matchup, you're going to win those games. And this team feels like it can match up with just about anybody in the SEC and in the country. Obviously, it's going to rely a lot on the 2 guys that have 1 year of eligibility left. That's Keyshawn Hall and Keyshawn Murphy. In those positions, Keyshawn Hall, he can play freaking 1, 2 through 5. He is that big. Incredible. He is that skilled. And he led the Big 12 in scoring last year. And the Big 12 that had guys like Hunter Dickinson, Darion Williams, JT Toppin at Texas Tech. It was jarring when he committed to Auburn to go look and see that he was the number 1 guy in the Big 12 in scoring. And that's very impressive. He was also a great rebounder. So, I think that there's some that are concerned about the rebounding of Auburn. And after losing Janai and Dylan Cardwell and Chaney Johnson. But I think Murphy and Hall will come in and really, really key that in. But again, still looking for that extra big just to add that depth. And, we talked about Scott coming in to visit, and he wears the Bane mask as well for Louisville this year. So
like a nose injury or a face injury or something like that last year.
I think he should keep it for the aesthetic. I think it looks great, and I think it's an awesome look. So we'll see what Scott does moving forward. But again, this roster is shaking out to be pretty solid, and I think it's a good mix of your high major guys in Hall and Murphy. We know that Coach Pearl and the staff love their D2 guys, and in Freeman, and then you go down to the freshman class as well as JUCO ranks with Bashir. I haven't even mentioned Emeka Oporum, who he is going to be a talented and skilled player. I just have to wonder how it's going to translate to the SEC next year, and that's why Coach Pearl and his staff want to get another big man, because you got to add some depth behind him just in case he's not ready. Because again, we can go all day predicting the starting five and what the rotations are going to look like for November and December, but as we know, it's not going to look that way when you get to SEC play. So, to you, Kyle, I have to wonder, when you look at these November and December games, and again, I do the same thing. I don't want to get too amped up about one player or about one way things are happening, because again, you go back to that Maui. I remember thinking Auburn hasn't thrown alley-oops like this in years, but that didn't really translate to SEC play, and that was fine because Auburn still ran away with the SEC. So it'll be interesting to see how this roster shakes out and plays in November and December before ultimately finding its final positions in January and February.
Absolutely. Before we get out of here, I got one more thing for you I want to ask. Talk me off the ledge here, okay? I'm not, and again, I said on the last show that I did and where I talked about this, there's only about two people in this world I would trust my life with, and Bruce Pearl's one of them. So if he says all I need is a big man, I'm good to go. So, but I have this little fear in my gut, another primary ball handler. If Todd comes back, that's 10 scholarships. If you add Scott, that's 11 scholarships. You get 13. Bruce typically leaves that 13th for a walk-on. So in theory, you got another spot. Ease my nerves here, or do you agree? Maybe Bruce, if that guy surfaces, if that Miles Kelly surfaces late or whatever, I guess he can't really surface because you got to be in the portal already. But if something materializes and there's a good fit, do you see Bruce going in that direction, or do you think we're just kind of had the big man and we're good to go?
Yeah, I think it leans towards the latter, where if a perfect fit comes out of the draft process and withdraws, then he's in the portal, then that might change things. And I don't think anyone would be mad about that, because when this staff sees someone they like, they're going to hone in on him and grab him out and snatch him and use him to the best of his ability. But I look at the NCAA tournament this past year and why Auburn was so successful. And it was because of the guards. It was because Tahad Pettiford, Denver Jones, and Miles Kelly had great games. Miles Kelly, not as much after that Alabama State game, but that game could have looked a lot different if he didn't come out hot in the first half and shooting the way he did in that March game against Kentucky. So I look at that fact as, Coach Pearl and his style and his offense are driven by scorers at the guard position. And that's what Tahad Pettiford, that's what Caden Magwood brings to the table. And I think that's what Elijah Freeman is going to bring to the table. Sure. Now, with that being said, obviously you need guys that aren't gonna dribble the air out of the ball. You want to make sure you're moving the ball around and getting it to your talented guys like Keyshawn Hall and Keyshawn Murphy. They're going to be the ones that are probably going to, I would think in the regular season, again, as we mentioned, like Janai Broom last year, they're probably going to be they're going to get SEC Player of the Week here and there. They're going to get that national recognition, and then the other guys won't get as much shine, but they're going to be the keys to this offense. And again, when you get to tournament play, guard play is what carries you. And I can't stress that enough. And I think there's something crazy about when Auburn guards under Coach Pearl score in the 12 or so tournament games that Auburn's played with him as the head coach. When they score 40-plus points, they win every time. When it's less than 40 points, that's when things get difficult, and it's tough for Auburn to pull out a win. And I think the Denver Jones replacement is going to be the one that we're going to have to see grow throughout the year. And
Denver didn't get
really,
the love I feel like he deserved on both sides of the ball.
And that's the point. He was named to the All SEC defensive team, but I feel like his offense was a calming presence on the offensive end that kept the offense flowing. And it was the best offense in the country from November to February. And that was because Denver Jones really made it easy on Miles Kelly and Janai Broome, as well as Tahad Pettifer behind him coming in. So, yeah, I think that if there was a perfect fit that withdrew from the NBA draft process, then, yeah, sure, maybe Coach Pearl go and grab him. But I don't think that's something that's necessary at this point. I think that backcourt it's young, it's raw, but it's strong. So I'm excited to see what they bring in. Again, you're relying on Trey again, and that's this world. And in 2 years, if all these guys come back, then you're going to be so excited about Elijah Freeman in his second year at Auburn, as well as Kevin Overton, Abdul Bashir, and so many other guys. So that's kind of the thought process here with, I think, the backcourt is to make sure you don't do too much there, and you trust the guys that you have.
Love it. I think Cade Magwood's got that dog in him too. I love it. He's got that snarl, that game face. So I love it.
He's definitely going to have some growing pains, I think, with the fact that he's similar to Taha. He likes to dribble the ball and he likes to be the primary scorer, but he does have the ability to pass the ball and be that one guard. He is a true combo guard where he can play the 1 or 2, and he'll probably be at the 2 some, other than when he's needed, which might be more than we expect if you don't get another ball handler. So I'm excited to see it, and he's got some bunnies too. He can jump out of the gym just like Tahad. So
he's electric. He's electric. Well, I feel better already. Jacob, man, awesome first go around. I can't wait to see what you do with this show and where you take it. Obviously, I'll be here occasionally. I'll be here in and out whenever you need me, and we'll have some fun. I can't wait to again get caught up weekly on the hoops. So, Jacob, tell everybody where they can find you and support you outside of just the Barn Hoops podcast.
Yeah. Follow me on Twitter, X at Jacob Hillman AU. Where, listen, I'm not just Auburn basketball. I'm at Auburn baseball. I'm at Auburn softball. So anything Auburn athletics, I'm covering. I'm there and supporting. So our work at the Auburn Sports Network is what I love, and that's why I'm joining the Barn Hoops over here with Kyle and team, and I'm pumped for it.
Let's do it. We'll be back again soon. It's another episode of the Barn Hoops podcast.